Sonal Mehta, Lead Medical Advisor, Intas. Intas Pharmaceutical is a leading pharma company having strong presence in fertility business across the globe. COVID-19 lockdown has been a tough time for all of us and we all are stuck. And so during this COVID-19 outbreak and this being a International Family Week, Intas Women Health team headed by Mr. Satpathy has organized this webinar on celebrating familyhood during COVID-19. I welcome you all to this webinar on COVID-19 given by eminent faculties Dr. P.C. Mahapatra and Dr. Varkha Chulani. Dr. P.C. Mahapatra sir will be speaking on saluting motherhood, Ma Tujhe Salam, and Dr. Varkha Chulani will be speaking on building family memory. Dr. P.C. Mahapatra is the ex-professor, head OBGY, Medical College Cuttack. He has been President Foxy 2011, Vice President 2004, and he's a great teacher, both undergraduate as well as postgraduate. He has organized many conferences and workshops, and he has been invited guest speaker and orator at various national Foxy RCS workshops and conferences. He has many publications, and he is founded voluntary organization Sakha in Odisha in 1995. He has to his credit many awards, and overall, he is a great human being. I welcome you, sir. Dr. P.C. Mahapatra, over to you, sir.
I personally welcome everybody, the members of support staff, members of the Intas, Ronak, and my younger brother, Mr. D.P. Satpathy, and Chulani Madam, in this session celebrating the international familyhood over the country, in the country when there is a lockdown situation. Well, a small, very tiny microorganism, you see, this is the point of realization today. A very tiny microorganism, what he has done over the global situation, it changed over the globes and infiltrated to the family and individual in particular. I think this is a point of realization. We have learned many lessons from this tiny microorganism. Seminars, webinars are being conducted every day, discussing the technical aspect, the administrative aspect regarding the corona and everything for that. And I thank Mr. Satpathy for this innovative webinar, a little deviation from the normal technical aspect and celebrating the motherhood last week and familyhood today. I welcome everybody to this particular session, and the viewers, I congratulate all of my fellow gynecologists for being in touch with me. I bring greetings from the place of Lord Jagannath. Unfortunately, the tiny microorganism is more powerful than the Lord. The microorganism corona has been able to lock down not only the human race over the globe, but he has been able to lock down the God. The God Lord himself along with the family are locked down inside the temple and is not able to come out of it. I think few days after the great Rath Yatra will be there, the car festival, there is still an uncertainty whether that will be there or not, or they will celebrate that inside the family. And God is also celebrating the familyhood along with us today. Well, therefore, I can say that what is a family? I think the core point at the center of the family, or the pivotal point of the family, is the women and the mother. The mother, without the mother, the family is no more. I think the pains and pleasures of being the family, the main pivotal point is the mother. And therefore, today, I am very fortunate to have a presentation of mine. I first salute the motherhood, and saluting the motherhood, Ma Tujhe Salam, I start my deliberation today about the different aspects of it. Well, many people ask me that, well, dear PC, how can you as a man talk about the feminine psyche? Remember that I have a mother, I have a grandmother, I have a wife, I have a daughter, and I have a granddaughter. I'm living with them. And moreover, for the last 38, 40 years, being a gynecologist by profession, I'm living in them. And therefore, the awareness and consciousness of the feminine psyche is there with me. And I can tell something more about the women and the mother for that. Now, understanding mother and motherhood is history, starting from the human race, and for a procreation and a family, we know since Adam and Eve and all that, we know the history, it is a history. But understanding the women is really a mystery, and everybody must have realized that. And therefore, first I will have two parts, understand the women in particular, then we'll have the understanding the mother and motherhood in particular. Now, after 3 years of premarital relationship and 35 years of marriage to a single woman and a single wife, I am not able to understand till today. And how within a couple of minutes, I will make you understand this unique creature by the Supreme Creator to all of you, my dear viewers. And moreover, the women is like this. In the morning, they are in a different form. In the afternoon, they are in a different form. In the evening, there is a different form. It's very difficult to predict which form she belongs at that particular moment. And therefore, it's very difficult. Even God has failed to understand this unique creature. Basically, the family consists of the men and women and the children and the grandchildren. Basically, if you see the species, man and women are the same species, but live in a different world. That understanding is not there. The same when man was living happily in the planet Mars and women was living happily in the planet Venus. Once the Venusians and the Martians were telescopic vision, and then they decided that they will leave their planets and decided Earth to be a planet and stay together to lead a family. And since that time, they started a family, man and women. The distinct instinctive values inherited with the man is a lunch chaser, and with the woman is a nest defender. This was there that initially for thousands and thousands of years, the role of man as a lunch chaser and the role of women or the wife as a nest defender. And therefore, absolutely family was really very, very smooth and pleasant in that manner. Now the society is changing, and with the changing society, the family, there is a drastic change in the family. Now every one of us remember and realize there was a joint family, nuclear family, lone mother, lone father, and all sorts of children out and all that. And therefore, there is some changes in the definition of the family now. And nowadays, if you analyze, a lot of problem occurs in the family. They disturb family and all that. And this is because they are not able to understand each other. The man is not able to understand women in right perspective and vice versa. And the basic philosophy is that they do not understand that they live in a different world. They control by different sets of rules, control the women, and different sets of rules control the men. It's not a uniform rule that controls both the species. And when they realize that the different sets of rules are there for the two, I think the question of adjustment and alignment and finding the pleasure remaining together comes in this way. And therefore, Corona has given a chance for lockdown situations and therefore given an empty opportunity to realize ourselves, who we are and what are the problem, and realizing the family in that. Are women and women are equal is a socio-political slogan. Are men and women are identical is a scientific issue. But still gender battle is on. And therefore, there have been a lot of reports of the disturbance, the domestic violence against men, domestic violence against women, the disturbed family, the gender battle is on, believing that man and women are equal. Personally, I don't say that man and women are equal. They are identical. Their innate abilities absolutely are different for them. The work which women can do, men cannot think of doing it. And just equating by virtue of sex doesn't have any meaning in it. And gender battle is still on and on. To call women the weaker sex is a libel. It's man's injustice to women. If by strength is meant brute strength, then indeed women is less brute than men. If by strength is meant moral power, then woman is immeasurably man's superior. Has she not greater intuition? Is she not more self-sacrificing? Has she not greater powers of endurance? Has she not greater courage? Without her, man could not be. The basic philosophy: a woman worries about the future until she gets a husband. A man worries about until he gets a wife. So men have many faults. Women only two: everything they say and everything they do. In work, an ayah; in the kitchen, a cook; in business, a baniya; in a bed, a quotation. If you have them all in one person, you do not have to polygamous. You have a one woman harem, Srimati India. India is incredible India, and a composite Indian women. Kashmiri complexion, Bengali hair and voice, Adivasi bosoms, Haryani gait, Maharashtrian cleanliness, South Indian figure, Punjabi animation, Hyderabadi coyness, Keralian literacy, Lucknowi speech and bearing, Parsi sophistication. It's a composite Indian women, incredible India. But when we come to motherhood, it is a singular philosophy. It doesn't have any discretion. It doesn't have any differentiation. It is only a singular philosophy. It's a unique motherhood for that. It would appear that the only chance of women getting equal rights is to enjoy sex, but to refuse to bear children, to let all children be born in test tubes and be cared for equality by man and women. Then only we can call that man and women are equal. And therefore, after that, we can abolish the motherhood for that. What is the problem of women? The problem of women of the present generation are different than the yesteryears. Now, the distinctive role of nest defender is not there. From nest defender and sex breeder to multiple role playing the modern women plays, and that creates a lot of problem with them. Changing status of the society. I think the status of the society is variable and dynamic. It's changing from the joint family status to the nuclear family status to the distant family and lone mother, lone father. All these are changing status of the society in the family that gets influenced for that. Acculturation of East and West. All Eastern women, we are always trying to follow the Western part for that. And acculturation. I remember Swami Vivekananda. He told about Eastern women and Western women. What is the difference? Eastern women gets maximum satisfaction by being exploited. Western women gets maximum satisfaction by exploiting others. I think that is the basic philosophy of Eastern women. And therefore, in the present juncture, the women or the mother gets problem from the partner, the domestic violence from the husband, problem as a parent. I think the own sons and daughters create a lot of problems psychologically, physically, everything, that financially, everything. Problem from the family, problem from the workplace, problem from the community for that. Now I think this is a situation, the workplace and community are not there, but they are facing a lot of problem from the family. I don't say everybody, but few of them. Women's problem starts with men. You see, menopause starts with men, menstrual pain starts with men, mental illness starts with men, even gynecology starts with a guy, even hysterectomy starts with his. I think these are all, the women, men creates a lot of problem for the women. Another problem of the women is in-laws and outlaws. Adam and Eve were the happiest and luckiest couple in the world because neither of them had a mother-in-law. Now, the key to success is understand women in right perspective, work in conjunction, and to have an ultimate goal to real happiness. And then only we can have an Adam and Eve of the new millennium and have a successful union of husband and wife and a good family to lead. There can be no civilization in which man and women are not equal partners. There can be no nation which has not been built up by their joint efforts. There can be no unity for which both man and women have not worked and planned together. And there can be no freedom unless men and women march forward together to achieve it. Viewers, just close your eyes and think. Gone are the days you think of your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents and compare with yourself. Gone are the days where survival was difficult, yet relationship was fantastic and easy. We have reached a stage where survival is easy, but relationship is strenuous and difficult for that. This is a very serious issue one has to consider for that. And therefore, you can't live with them, but you can't live without them. And this is the reality. Reality of man. Man is an object, woman is a subject. Man is an inert, woman is life. Man is mechanical, woman is emotional. Man is static, woman is dynamic. Man is physic, woman is psyche. And man is empty, woman is energy. And man is incomplete in all respects, woman is complete in all respects. And the combination of a man can have a complete family and pleasures, not pains. Remember, there are 4 best things in the world: Indian wife, American salary, Chinese food, British house. And 4 worst things in the world: Indian salary, American wife, Chinese house, and British food. Unique journey of the female species. Now the second part will continue. With the female species, you start from the unborn female child to child born, becomes an adolescent girl, adult female and women, aspiring motherhood and motherhood, lonely mother, grandmother, and till the last breath from the birth till the death. A woman species, the journey of the female species is like this, from birth to death. And therefore, women realize life much than the man. I remember, I quote one Acharya Rajneesh philosophy. When Acharya Rajneesh was sick and the disciples came and find out after your death, what is your wish? And these are the things we realize that Bhagavan Rajneesh and all that, from the activities, from what he has done and all that. Then he told, you write, you correct it. You just crush it. Give me a pen and I will crush it. I'm not a Bhagavan, he told that Acharya Rajneesh. He told, in the Samadhi of mine, you will write this much. Never born, never died. Visited this planet called Earth from this date to this date. I think this is the understanding of the life. I remember the great medical philosopher, I think he is told that yes, 100% of the people, those who are born, realize life. But the paradox is that 99.9% realize life at the deathbed. I think this is a situation in the lockdown period. Apart from doing any work, I think realizing life is very, very important for that. And they can do a lot of things in the present life situation with the family and beyond. Man and woman are neither equal nor unequal. They are unique. And the meeting of the 2 unique beings brings something miraculous in existence. Woman has suffered slavery, the woman has suffered humiliation, woman has suffered economic dependence, and above all, she has suffered a constant state of pregnancy. For centuries, she has lived in pains, and therefore it needs a serious introspection. Have you heard the term girlhood? No girlhood, no fatherhood, no femalehood, no wifehood, only motherhood. And therefore, this is something special. I was going to the definition of motherhood. It's very difficult to define a motherhood. By English words, it cannot define a motherhood. But of late in 1988, Webster Dictionary has defined the motherhood as a capacity to love, to create, to produce, to watch over, to nourish, and to protect. I think everything encompasses in the definition of the motherhood. But still it is incomplete. I feel that the definition of motherhood is still incomplete, and it's very difficult to define motherhood. Mother and motherhood. What is the mother and motherhood? Mothers are examples of human relations. Man is not concerned about that. Mother is the main human relations. They're expert in finance management. They keep on saving small amounts of money in the terms of crisis. They bring out and help in the situation. They are a perfect example, exemplary of situational brilliance. I think in adverse situations like this, in the crisis situations, they manifest the brilliance in that. Father cannot manifest, but the mother has an exemplary of situational brilliance. So mother and unwritten history is a life of sacrifice, untold, unfulfilled desires of mother. I'll be the master of what is mine own. She is my goods, she is my chattel, she is my house, my household staff, my field, my barn, my horse and my ox, my ass, my anything. Taming up this to William Shakespeare has defined this. Motherhood is a great art. You have to learn it. I have to give you 4 messages to the mother in this critical juncture. Message 1, never treat the child as yours. Never possess the child. It comes through you, but it's not yours. God has only used you as a vehicle, a medium. Love, but never possess. If you possess, I think the pains will be starting from there. Message 2, never treat a child like a child. Treat as an adult person. Treat with great respect. Third, don't listen to pseudo morality, pseudo religion, pseudo culture. Listen to nature. Understand yourself and understand nature. That will give a lot of pleasures in your life, in the family. Message 4, motherhood is not a duty. Many people say that motherhood is a duty. Motherhood is not a duty. It's a celebration and you enjoy it. It's not only doing, but feeling. And you enjoy and celebrate the motherhood for that. Now, salute to motherhood. Just to give birth to a child is one thing, to be a mother is totally different. Any woman can give birth to a child. That's a very simple phenomenon. But to be a mother needs great art, needs great understanding, and a great sacrifice for that. So bearing is very easy, but rearing is a very difficult job. And you are creating a human being, the greatest of the creation. So salute to motherhood. You have to remember that your work has not just finished. It has started. Take it joyously. You are creating something immensely valuable. You are carrying a life. You are protecting a life. And therefore, it needs sacrifice, sacrifice, and sacrifice. Motherhood is a blessing. To be a mother is sweet. To be motherly is a difficult phenomena. It's absolutely human. It transcends animality. It has nothing to do with biology. It's only love, pure love, and unconditional love. There are 3 types of love. Love, father's love is only love. Pure love is love with the God is pure love. Love with the God or supreme is the pure love. But mother's love is unconditional love. Without any conditioning, the love is there from the mother, not from the father. So love, trust, beauty, and sincerity, truthfulness, and authenticity are the feminine qualities, only quality worth living, has said. Now there are various English, beautiful language having different terminologies. Female, women, lady, mother. Being a female is a matter of birth. By birth, you are a male or a female. Being a woman is a matter of age. Being a lady is a matter of choice. But being a mother is a gift of God. So motherhood, when it begins and when it ends, child is born, mother is born. Beginning is certain, but ending is indefinite, infinite for that. Even grandmother are now grandparenting their child. And in the current situation, the societal changes. So the motherhood basic components are bearing and rearing. Bearing for 9 months is very easy, but rearing is a very difficult and a complex for that. So the hard facts of motherhood, biological instinct. Motherhood is a biological instinct. It is needed for continuation and propagation of human race. And in the present juncture, we want everybody wants a quality of human offspring should be improved. Pleasures out of pains and pains, insignia of love, exemplary sacrifice, living within bondage, existence of family, society, newborn, and continuation of the human race on and on for decades and decades. And therefore, the motherhood is a celebration, experience, feeling, and realization of motherhood is the important component. Beginning of motherhood, pregnancy, and childbirth, there are various technical considerations we are not discussing today. Mother, the unborn connect. The fetus can hear, fetus can react, fetus can respond. And therefore, we have gone beyond the science to Garva Sanskar and theory and practice, preparing for quality of spring, not a quantity of spring. Now, I have done a study about 10 years back. And this study, I have taken the candidates of the father missing or mother missing. And then I have done a study when an option is given to the child, whether the father should die or mother should die. It's father. If mother is there, I think the whole family and his personality and the life is made up with that. If the father is there, but the mother dies, there's a disturbed family and the disturbed personality of the upbringing of the children for that. This is the significance of mother. There are barriers to motherhood: poverty, literacy status, personal upbringing, peer factor, technical barrier, and support to the mother in terms of physical, psychological, emotional, financial, and changing society. There is a lot of changing trends, and we have to elevate and beyond the barriers, we have to recognize and just abolish it. The changing trends in motherhood now, from the joint family to the nuclear family. I think these are our, Mrs. Chulani will narrate everything regarding that in my subsequent speaker. Nuclear family, working partners, there is a lot of problem. I think double income, quadruple problem. Now all these are locked up in the current situation. Aspiration unfulfilled infertile couple, motherhood shattered, pregnancy loss, surrogacy, adoption, elderly mother, lone father, grandmotherhood, and then this is the last, emptiness syndrome. Emptiness syndrome and Pica syndrome. Emptiness syndrome, there are many mothers who are being involved constantly under their children's activities. They submerge under the children's activities. They are very much tensed, even if the children are outside, it's not close to them in the family. They are worried every time because they have an attachment. I believe that attachment is a normal phenomena. We cannot abolish it, but practice detachment along with the detachment before that, so that you will not suffer from the grave emptiness syndrome. So practice some amount of detachment along with attachment for years together. And the last is a Pica syndrome. Nowadays, this is a common situation in India. Parents in India, children abroad. There are therefore, these are some Pica syndrome. There are many people, the family is also disturbed in that. Hundreds of new drops to the great dawn, hundreds of bees in the purple clover, hundreds of butterflies in the land, but only one mother the wide world over. And therefore, viewers, ladies and gentlemen, this is Ma Tujhe Salam. Let it be a God, let it be a human race, irrespective of the caste, creed, religion, financial status. I think mother is mother. Ma Tujhe Salam. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ronak.
Yeah, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir, for giving us a very nice lecture. After listening to all the technical lectures, we are very happy to listen you. And you rightly said that mother completes the family. And in our Sanskrit language, also it is saying told as Janni Janma Bhumishya Swargadapi Gariyasi. So we thank you all. Thank you, and on behalf of INTAS, I thank you, sir. With this, I welcome Dr. Varkha Chulani for the next lecture. She is clinical psychologist and psychotherapist, associate fellow supervisor, the Albert Ellis Institute, New York City, USA, consultant, Lilavati Hospital, Mumbai, in private practice since last 20 years. She's author of 7 Mantras of Teenage Success for the Thinking Woman, co-author of Conquering Laziness, Liberation from Addictions, and the Power of Your Mind's Eye. And she has contributed for radio, TV, and newspapers. She will be speaking on building family memory during this COVID-19. I welcome Madam Dr. Varkha Chulani.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mehta, for a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Dr. Mahapatra, for a very enlightening speech. Thank you, Mr. Satpathy and Mr. Solanki, as always, from INTAS and INTAS Pharmaceuticals, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. At this time, which is a very challenging time for most of us, I thought it would be very interesting to have a certain different perspective to the lockdown. And that is to build memories. For better or for worse, all of us are cohabiting with each other since the last nearly 54 days. Yes, I think it's 54 days. And we have changed, some for the better, some for not so better. There is a physical constraint which is being put on us. There are boundaries which we cannot get out of. We cannot get out of our homes. There's a lockdown. And there is all physical restrictions that are being compelled on us by, obviously, the government and authorities. The entire premise being that we should be trying to manage ourselves during the virus. Our lives have changed. From now on, we are going to be much more hyper-vigilant, if not paranoid, about stepping out of our homes. Our physical behavior would have changed. We will be washing hands much more often than we ever had. We will wear masks, which we had never done. We will wear gloves. We will go out only really if it is necessary. Some of us have taken this physical attributes of the lockdown in our stride and are actually beginning to enjoy the days at home. Some of us have resigned ourselves to our fate and are moping and feeling rather depressed about the fact that we are being restricted and constricted. And some of us, of course, are anxiously awaiting the lockdown to be reopened so that we can get along with our lives. But I do believe that there is another facet to the lockdown, because I am of the opinion that we can make good things happen out of very bad things. And the good thing that we can make happen is that when life gives us lemonades, when life gives us lemons, we can start learning how to make lemonade. What do I mean? For better or for worse, 24/7, you and me have been compelled. We have been compelled to live with our spouses, with our children, with our parents, with our grandparents, with the paying guests, with cohabitors, with people, our partners, who we've really not been used to living 24/7 together. But as I said, I do believe in the philosophy that we can make good things happen out of very bad things. And since life has handed a lemon, why not we all learn how to make lemonade? And by this, I mean, can we learn the philosophy of building memories and sentiments during this lockdown? And I thought there are 4 methods that I would teach today for all of us to learn how to build our memories. But I thought instead of giving you points, why not tell it to you in the form of stories? So let's listen to story 1. As you know, Bill Gates, a very famous man for building Microsoft, was one day being interviewed. And it was coming to the close of the office hours, and an interviewer was sitting in his office and asking him all kinds of questions about the success of Microsoft, about how he had built such a great organization. And the interviewer asked Mr. Bill Gates one question. He said, "Tell me, Mr. Gates, what according to you is your biggest asset?" Bill Gates smiled and pointed at the door. At the door of the office, a man, an office worker, was leaving because it was the end of the day. The interviewer was confused. He said, "What do you mean, sir? I don't understand." Mr. Bill Gates pointed again. He said, "Can you see that man leaving the office door?" So the interviewer nodded, said, "Yes." He said, "That man is my biggest asset." What did he mean? Today, unfortunately, human beings are never looked upon by most of us as assets. But for Bill Gates, he believed that the only way he could build a great company was to have the human being as his biggest asset, or what he calls human capital. You and me have never looked as capital as other things other than materialistic things. So we look at capital as money, we look at capital as homes, as nursing homes, as companies, as equity, as gold, etc. But we have never looked upon a human being as a capital. And we have definitely not looked upon as a human being as a resource. For Microsoft, their biggest asset were the people working in the organization to build it to where it was. And so when he told the interviewer, "My biggest asset is the human being," he believed in the capital of the human. Today, in our lockdown days, when you and me are being forced to cohabit with the people 24/7 at home, whether they are spouses, our children, our grandparents, or simply paying guests or our cohabitants, can we look at all of us as capital? All capital does not necessarily have to be materialistic capital in terms of wealth, money, ownership, possessions. There is something called emotional capital. Can we look upon each of us who are living with each other as a capital on which we can take strength from, support from, emotional nourishment from, care, compassion, warmth, and love from. If we are able to turn our lens towards this lockdown and see the human being who resides with us as a capital, as an asset, it will make all the difference in us building these memories. So I repeat, the first step towards building memories and sentiments is looking at the human being as an emotional resource, looking at the human being as a capital. And how can we make a person a capital, an emotional capital for us? That depends largely on the attitude that we take towards them. Remember, every day in life, you and me meet people all the time, except for the last 54 days. We are being compelled to stay with the same people. And we can either take an attitude of a wall builder, where we erect walls against each other, or we can take the attitude of a bridge builder, where we can build bridges with the people that we are cohabiting with. Unfortunately, in the recent past, there have been family feuds, people are getting along less and less, and there has completely been a disengagement and an alienation amongst humans. We are too busy, stuck on our phones, we're constantly on our gadgets. We really haven't learned the art of being a bridge builder. And the attitude today that if we count our blessings because we have people in the flesh to live with in these very difficult times will be the first step towards building a memory. So point one towards building memories is count your blessings. Your blessings are the human beings that you are compelled with to stay with for these 24/7 days, and God knows for how many more days that this lockdown is going to be extended to. If you can build a bridge between you and your cohabitants rather than erect a wall, you would do what Rockefeller, the great businessman, said. He said, give me two people with equal ability. I will choose the man who gets along, because the man who gets along gets ahead. And today in this lockdown, the building of bridges will help us to get along, to reconstruct relationships which unfortunately may have become sour, may have become toxic, may have unfortunately fallen by the way. To me, that is making lemonade out of the lemons that we've been given. That is making the best of a bad bargain. The bargain is that we are stuck together. But if we change our attitudes and look at every one of us as an asset, as a capital, as a blessing, it will be the first step towards building memories and building sentiment. So let's all learn to be bridge builders. We can become bridge builders if we look at the people we cohabit as emotional resources for our strength, for our compassion, for our love, for our warmth, for our joy, so that when we look back on these days of the coronavirus, we look upon these days with fondness and joy rather than ill will and poor memories. So do what Bill Gates said. He believed he couldn't work alone. He constructed Microsoft on the basis of the human resource. He believed every human that worked for him was his basic asset. Let us turn our lens and see with a very different perspective that today, the people that you and me cohabit with are our assets, is a capital on which we can rely for our emotional stamina, our emotional strength, our care, our love, and of course, our compassion. And that can happen if you go with an attitude of being a bridge builder rather than a wall erector. So the first step is, let's all count our blessings that we have actually someone in the flesh to engage with. A lot of people are being left alienated and alone and isolated in these lockdown days. If we count the blessings that we actually have people in the flesh who we can touch, feel, speak to, not only virtually, but actually in the physical realm, you and me will be able to see the fortunes and the blessings that you and me, thankfully, have been gifted with. Now coming to a second story to cover point two. Here was a man who had a beautiful wife. They got along really well. But unfortunately, one day, the wife began to develop a certain skin disease. Her skin began to peel, her beauty began to wane. This man was a businessman and had to undertake a tour. On returning from a tour, unfortunately, one day he met with an accident and he lost his eyesight. However, their marriage continued. He was blind, he couldn't see her deteriorating skin condition, but they continued to love each other because there were many other facets to this woman: her care, her love, her compassion for his condition because of his inability to see. One day, all of a sudden, she died and he was heartbroken. After finishing all the rites and rituals and putting his dead wife to the flames, he decided that he wanted to leave the town. A relative spoke to him and said, "But how will you leave the town? Until now, your wife was helping you walk around and do everything. And now, how will you be able to manage with your blindness on your own?" The man smiled and said, "I'm not completely blind. I pretended to be completely blind so that I could not see her deterioration in her skin condition. Had I made it aware that I could see how she was deteriorating, she would have fallen in her own eyes. She would have been utterly miserable. She would have hated herself and would have been constantly worried if I would have continued to love her with her illness. I pretended to be fully blind only so that I could save her from feeling ashamed about her illness and, of course, from never worrying about the fact whether I continued to love her or not." What do we learn from this? He pretended to be fully blind because he did not want her to fall in her own eyes and did not want her to worry about whether he would continue to love her with her illness. Many a time, we usually only focus on what people don't have. We never look at what people have. Let us learn to become like the blind man. Let us actually become purposefully blind to some faults that other people have. We all have faults. And in this lockdown, instead of constantly being judgmental and critical, let us instead do what the blind man did, which is ignored what the woman, his wife, did not have. Her beauty was depleting, but he ignored that. He did not look at that. He did not spotlight that. He did not pay attention or focus on that. Instead, he focused on every other aspect of her. Today, in the lockdown, you and me will be irritated with certain facets and qualities that our cohabitants obviously display. But let us learn the art like the blind man of accepting each other for what is and for what we have, rather than constantly being judgmental and critical for what we don't have. Yes, human tendency is such that we always look for the things which are disadvantages to us. We never look at the things which are advantages to us. And in the second step of building memories, besides the first one, which is counting our blessings, the second is accepting each other for what is. Because when we begin to accept each other and keep the focus on what the person has rather than what the person doesn't have, like the blind man, we will begin to take advantages of the complexities and the personality and the characteristics of the people who are cohabiting with us. So, if you really want to build fond memories and sentiments for this period of a lockdown, let's accept each other as is and let's focus on all the advantages that these cohabitants bring us. Let me give you my personal example. I have not really known how to cook. Luckily for me, both in my parental home and in my married home, I always had someone who had the ability in terms of a cook who used to come in and cook for us. So I really didn't have to bother at all. But since 54 days, because now part-time cooks or part-time people are not allowed to come home, I am being compelled to cook. So I open YouTube, I put on Google, I try and learn recipes, and hit and miss, I'm able to put something on the table. My family is not complaining and not criticizing, not judging, and definitely not condemning my cooking. In fact, they celebrate it and they're celebrating it as if I'm Sanjeev Kapoor of Khana Khazana and putting out something out there for them to relish and for them to enjoy. What are they doing? They are doing exactly what the blind man did. They are being able to only focus on the ability and the advantages that at least this person, that's my wife and my mother, are able to put something on the table for us to eat. If you and me learn the art of doing that, where we turn a blind eye, literally and figuratively, to the inabilities of others and only focus on what they're able to bring us during this period of lockdown, you and me will be able to build very, very, very healthy and happy memories. So, point one of building sentiments and memories during a lockdown is let's be like Bill Gates and count our blessings. Point two, let's be the blind man and accept each other for what is. That means focus only on the things that bring the person or bring us joy and ignore and turn a blind eye towards the things that unfortunately bring us irritations and annoyances. With that, you will find your days, which are compelled to be together, to be much more fruitful and to be much more happier, and of course, to be much more joyous. Remember, environments are very important in these already tough times. The last thing that you and me need is irritations and annoyances for the smallest of things. So can we literally and figuratively turn a blind eye towards the things that our people and our family members don't have and instead focus on the things which they do? Now coming to story number three. There was a couple married for 10 years, trying very hard to conceive and to have children. They had tried IVF, they had tried all kinds of procedures, but unfortunately, nothing had really worked for them. A lot of people were putting pressure on them, suggesting that they divorce and that they separate and that they go their ways. But the love and bonding between them did not allow them to leave each other. It was year 11 now, and they had hoped that year 11 would somehow be a lucky year for them. But they continued their journey and they continued their work. One day, the husband noticed that his wife was walking with another man, and that man's hand was gently on his wife's arm. He noticed that she was walking with him, but he didn't say anything. He just ignored it. Couple of weeks, he found that his wife was more and more with this other man, but he said nothing. He was just getting a little concerned and perturbed about who this man was because he just couldn't remember him. He had never seen this man over the last 10 years of being married to his wife. One day when he was home, the phone rang. He picked up the phone and there was a man's voice at the other end which said, "Hello dear, I'm coming to your house in half an hour." And the phone got cut. The man was absolutely agitated and perturbed, and he believed that this was the voice of the same man who he had seen one day, or not one day, for many weeks with his wife. They used to be walking together. One day he had even seen the man giving a peck on the cheek to his wife, but he had never asked her any questions. He had just suffered silently and kept everything inside. But the phone call was the last thing that really broke him. He was fuming, he was agitated. How dare he said that this man has the courage to call home, and not only call home, but very nonchalantly say that I'm going to be home in another half an hour. He was walking towards his wife's room with a jug of water in her hand because he wanted to confront her. And suddenly, because of his anger, the jug fell and it broke. The wife heard the crash of the jug and all the glass splinter. And she came running out of her room with a paper in her hand, wondering what had happened. She asked him, "Is everything okay? What has happened?" The husband, being so agitated and furious, pushed her. She fell on the broken glass, and one of the glass pieces unfortunately pierced her, and she felt unconscious. He was astounded. He didn't realize what he had done, but he saw that in her hand, she was holding a letter. He looked at the letter, and the letter read, "Dear husband, I'm beyond excited and don't know how to tell you this, but I am writing this to you because my writing will convey to you what I don't think my words will be able to convey. We are blessed. I'm 2 months pregnant, and I have been seeing a doctor cousin of mine who I had lost touch with 10 years of our married life. Once, when I met him, he is the person who's going to take care of me and our babies. And I just wanted to thank you for being so steady by my side over these 10 years when we've tried to conceive and get children. The man was astounded and shocked. He didn't know what to say. In the meantime, the doorbell rang, and the man who had made the call, I'm going to be there in half an hour, entered the house. On seeing his sister in a pool of unconscious glass, he lifted her and rushed her to the hospital. Unfortunately, they lost their babies. What can we learn from this very simple example? The man had suffered silently, never communicating and asking his wife who she was meeting and who she was seeing. On reading the letter, he discovered that this was just a long-lost cousin brother of hers who also happened to be a doctor who was going to treat his wife to be able to take care of the delivery of the babies which they had conceived 2 months ago. Point 3 of living and building memories is, let us not assume things about the people that we live with. Let us learn the art of asking and communicating. A lot of us have forgotten how to talk to each other. We are so busy with our heads buried in our phones. We are so busy across laptops and computers and all kinds of gadgets that we haven't learned to talk, to speak, to listen, to communicate. So if you want to build memories over these lockdown days, please let's regain the art of talking and listening to each other. So point 3, besides counting our blessings, accepting each other as is assume, don't assume, ask. Don't assume, ask. Let's ask what we really mean when we talk and we cohabit with each other. A lot of misinterpretations and misinformation, and actually not even misinformation because there's no real talking. Miscommunication happens because of silence. People really don't say to each other what they really want. And we are not mind readers. We are not going to get into each other's heads and figure what the family, people who we love and people who we live with really want from us. So if we want to build memories, let's learn, let's relearn, I would say, the art of communication and interaction, because all society is formed with an intricate web of interpersonal interaction. In fact, a very famous sociologist, George Simmel, said that association, the ability to build culture, happens when human phenomena, in a complex way, interact and engage. And in today's lockdown, you and me have stopped engaging with the outside world, at least, other than virtually and of course in these webinars. But that's not enough. What about learning the art of engaging, communicating, interacting, getting along interpersonally in the flesh with real people, not virtually, by learning the art of talking, speaking, listening, and comprehending? We come with our prejudices and our biases to the people we love and we live with. We paint them all black and we think that all they have is only the negative, unfortunate qualities. We assume so many things about their behaviors. We assume so many things about why they did this or why they did that. The best thing would be, let's open our mouths and learn to engage, to ask, to clarify. So a very important step to communication, besides expression, is clarification. Because human beings are so prejudiced and biased, we haven't ever clarified what we think we have understood. More often than not, actually, we have misunderstood. We have never really understood what it is that our people in our homes are going through, what they are going through in their own heads. We have never reached out to them to have meaningful, interactions and engagements, we run away. We run away because we are scared. We're scared of our own emotionality. We're scared of their emotionality. We don't want to communicate because communication may open up a can of worms which we may never want to address. But if you and I want to make lemonade out of lemons that have been handed to us in these very tough days, let's reclaim back the art of communication, the art of talking, more importantly, the art of listening instead, and put away the art of assuming, like this husband did. He assumed that his wife was having an affair. Had he just raised a question that, you know, darling, who was this person that who I saw you walking with? Maybe a lot would have unfurled and unfolded rather than him stewing and then ultimately pushing his wife and losing his children. So let's learn, besides counting our blessing, accepting each other as is, also learning not to assume and asking, communicating, interacting, and engaging with the people that you and me are cohabiting with. Point 4. In these days, there is a common phenomenon of fear. And there are people who I call fear mongers. All they're doing is, oh, the virus spreads like this and the virus spreads like that, and don't touch this and don't do that. And the entire milieu and the entire environment is of fear mongering, people spreading more panic. I have developed another word, but it's not called fear mongering. It's called care mongering. I want each of us who are cohabiting with others to become care mongers. What is my definition of care mongering? Care mongering is a purposeful attempt, a purposeful, deliberate attempt by each member who is being forced to cohabit with each other to arouse and generate love and compassion in the family. So let's learn to become caremongers. But how do we learn that? Caremongering starts when there is trust. Unfortunately, again, in the recent past, we have become so suspicious, doubtful, skeptic, cynical about the people who we even love and engage with and live with. Can we, in our need to become caremongers for each other, instead learn the art of building trust? Trust is the foundation of a family. If you and me don't trust the people who we live with, you and me will never be able to go into the role of caremongers. Trust building comes with a philosophy of believing that everybody is saying something because their intentions are good. Many a time, we doubt our own family members' intentions. We do believe that they are telling us something either to put us down, to make us feel small, to make us feel inadequate. Very few have the ability to believe that when somebody is giving us feedback, it is for our own good. Trust building happens when you don't doubt the intent with which a family member, a cohabitant, is asking you to do something. So if I'm being told by my husband, for example, that if you're stepping out to buy something, please wear a pair of gloves. If I see it, oh, he's trying to control me, he's trying to dominate me, he's always like that, I will not be able to build trust. And in fact, I will attribute meanings to his suggestion in a very bad way. But if I believe that the intent is only to protect me, and the intent is only to see that I hopefully, when I step out, don't have the chance of contracting the virus because my hands will be protected with my gloves, I now begin to see him as trustworthy. All trust is built by attributing the right motives to why someone is asking you to do what they do, or why they're asking you to do something is for our own benefit. So let's learn caremongering by building trust. But that's not enough. Building trust also happens when we accept that we are all imperfect people. We all can and do make mistakes. So if we can right our wrongs, let's hear that again. If we can right our wrongs, that means when we make a mistake, when we make errors and we right them. How do we right them? by apologizing about them, by saying sorry to the cohabitant or to the member of the family who we may have made a mistake towards, or may have done something wrongly in terms of, maybe I put too much salt in the food, or maybe I forgot to iron the clothes, or whatever. Okay. I am also building trust because I'm accepting that I can be wrong and I'm ready to right my wrong. So building trust happens in two ways. When we believe the intent of what I'm being told is for my own good, I do not attribute motives of why I'm being told to do something. And two, when I'm willing to accept my imperfections, when I'm willing to accept that I, and all of us as humans are imperfect creatures, we make mistakes, and I'm willing to right my wrong, and I'm willing to say sorry, I'm willing to use apology as a method to build that bridge, you will see that these lockdown days will be days which will be looked upon with fondness, with kindness, with compassion, and with the fact that you and me have been able to build sentiments and memories. So I do a quick recap. Let's all learn, like Mr. Bill Gates of Microsoft, that the human being is a capital. All capital is not materialistic capital. There is something called emotional capital. Let us learn the art of looking at the people that you and me cohabit with as assets rather than as liability. The emotional assets, the supportive aspects, the compassion, the care, the love, the caring, the warmth are all emotional assets which are intangible. But in this time of lockdown, where emotionally many of us are fragile, what better way than to count our blessings? So point one of building memories and sentiments in these difficult times is, let's all count our blessings that we actually have people in the flesh who we can engage with and who we can look upon as assets and who we can build emotional resources from. Then let's be like the man who pretended to not be fully blind. He could see, who pretended that he couldn't see at all because he did not want his wife to fall in her own eyes because of her skin disease and her deteriorating condition. He accepted her for what she was and looked at every other facet of what she brought to the marriage rather than only her beauty. So let us accept the people we cohabit with for what they are, and let's focus on what they have rather than on what they don't have. So let's, in a way, turn a blind eye, figuratively and literally, to some habits, abilities, methods that some of our cohabitors have, which can be slight irritants for us, because if we focus on what they have, it will make these days much more bearable and, of course, much more enjoyable for us. Let us not be like the man who pushed his wife out of anger thinking that she was having an affair. And instead, let us do point three. Let's not assume anything about anybody. Let's learn the art of communicating, talking, speaking, engaging, because all society is built because of the intricate web of interaction and engagement between each other. So let us learn how to talk, how to speak, how to listen, how to clarify, more importantly, so that we can comprehend what we are trying to be told. Let us not make assumptions, because otherwise prejudices and biases color most of our interactions with our loved ones. And of course, let's all learn to be caremongers. Let's learn to build trust. And trust is built by not attributing motives which are very different from what you believe. Let's trust the people who are telling us things for our own good. Let's attribute that their intentions for whatever information or whatever suggestions that they make to us is built on a foundation of well-meaningness. And of course, number two of building trust is, let's accept that we are all imperfect people, and let's accept that by saying sorry, by apologizing for the errors, we will only build an environment of wellness and compassion in these very difficult times. So I have found all relationships usually get sour, not because of the love that lacks, but more because of the friendships that are not there. Let's learn to be friends in these very difficult days of the lockdown, so that we can build healthy, and happy memories. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving us a very nice talk on building family memories. I think we have learned something, that is building, means counting our blessings, building bridges, not the walls, and accepting our cohabitants, and many more. Thank you on behalf of INTAS and all the viewers.
Any questions? I'd be happy to take.
Yeah, ma'am. For Dr. P.C. Mahapatra, sir, how come your derivative knowledge of motherhood is so strong without actual knowledge of motherhood being a male?
That's why I've clarified from the beginning that by living with the gynecologist for the last 38 years, I'm living in them. I'm having a consciousness and awareness on that. And that's why I believe that I've got acquired something from that.
To ma'am, woman's tear is a symbol of strength or weakness?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Women tear is a symbol of strength or weakness?
Why women? The assumption is that men don't cry. So tears is not a symbol of strength or weakness. Tears is a symbol of humanness.
Right.
For emotional blackmailing?
Yeah.
It's not emotional blackmailing. The very fact that somebody is trying to emotionally blackmail us only indicates that they feel that you and me are not giving enough attention to them. So it's not blackmailing. Maybe if we try our approach and be a little different and more attention giving, I think the blackmailing will stop.
Correct. And there is one question, I think, for Dr. Mahapatra, sir. How one 70-year-old doctor can examine a patient or do an ultrasound examination maintaining 2 gauge distance from a patient in this COVID-19 lockdown?
I think this I have repeatedly telling that COVID is a pandemic, but pandemicity of fear is more than COVID pandemic. Now the fear pandemic is more prevalent all over the world, and particularly in countries like India. We are comparing America, we are comparing Italy, we are comparing the positivity and deaths and everything from the morning till evening. The journalist and the administrator are focusing all these. I think we are too much worried about that. The basic philosophy, basic thing by last 2-3 months of Corona, we know that we have earlier also virus infestation and virus epidemics like the SARS, the MERS, and even the swine flu and all that. Now, in the swine flu, in one the country, the Indian death, I think 46,000 in a year. So nobody worried about it. But when the death is about 2,500, they're worried about it, everything. And more doctors are really concerned. I feel that apart from the public, the doctors are worried more because they feel that yes, every patient is presumed to be COVID positive unless otherwise disproved. This is a wrong philosophy. I think by that we are going to a step of more of non-COVID casualties. I believe that lots of people must have died because of medical, I think, failure of medical treatment for that also. I remember in my own situation also, I can find out that many of the cases that either because the patient do not come to the doctor in the right moment, they're pending it and bleeding, and they presented in the last moment in the deathbed. I think that by that time you can't do anything for that. On the other hand, the doctors are not seeing patients because they think that if COVID positivity is there, then the contact tracing and all that, you are quarantined, your hospital is closed, your ultrasound center is closed. This is the situation for which there is a problem. This is a cyclical thing which is there. So my suggestion would be that we cannot ignore it completely, but I think we take a distance. We know the pathogenesis and all that. A mask, simple mask, gloves, and just a distance, and then manage the ultrasound. There is no problem of doing an ultrasound, and many people are too apprehensive of putting a shield, making a barrier, imparting more on the telemedicine. I don't believe telemedicine can be an adjunct to that, but it's not a solution. I believe I'm more physical than digital. So that I must say that yes, ultrasound, one can do that. I have seen because of lack of ultrasound, many people have died. Case of ectopic pregnancy not diagnosed and died because of the hemorrhage, rupture uterus, died because of the bleeding and all that. There's many situations like this. And therefore, to the sonologist as well as to me, you take a personal precaution, minimum precaution, not absolutely wearing a PPE and doing. I don't recommend that you wear a PPE, personal protection equipment, and do the ultrasound scanning for that. It's only indicated when it's a COVID positive and you are doing a treatment of that, your ventilators is there or during a surgery is there, then it is indicated. Otherwise, I think making a safe distance is important. You can do an ultrasound. We are doing it for regularly for last 2 months. We are doing it with the minimum protection of a mask, at least taking a history of the patient, and just patient has to wear mask for that also, and we can do that. There's no problem for that. Even the risk is more to the anesthetist. I show that yes, we are not doing routine cases, but we are not ignoring the emergencies. The emergencies, if you ignore it, I think there will be a lot of fatalities for that also, and which we see for the last 2 months. So my suggestion is that please don't involve in your fear epidemic, and that's you console yourself that yes, pandemicity of COVID is less than pandemicity of the fear.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, ma'am, for giving us a very nice talk on motherhood and how to build our memories during this lockdown period and making us see the different perspective of life during this lockdown period. Thank you on behalf of Intas.
Thank you,
Sonal madam, and thank you, Varka madam and PC sir for such a wonderful talk. I'm sure all the audience and the whole of my team who have joined this webinar have enjoyed this. I've been getting continuous WhatsApp messages post your talk, and thank you so much for sparing your time and attending this.
Thank you, Mr. Sonal. Thank you,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.